Japan Travel Smart Podcast is an original standalone media project. We remain unaffiliated with any travel agency service or similar commercial venture. This is Japan Travel Smart. My name's Johnny, and I hope you join me to discover a better Japan travel experience. Welcome back to Japan Travel Smart. This is your travel companion Johnny, and this is journey number 26. Japan Forever Changed. Thoughts on the state of tourism and travel in Japan. Japan Travel Smart is a bi-weekly podcast all about the joy of travel through Japan, far and wide, from the perspective of a frequent visitor who just can't get enough of the place that does it best. I'm here to spark your curiosity and offer inspiration to experience Japan's overlooked attractions and their charms, to equip you with the tools to better approach the logistics of your trip, and an always fresh perspective on the ever-changing Japan travel landscape. Whether it's your first trip or your 50th, let's uncover the secrets that make Japan a traveler's paradise. Ready for the journey? Let's go. Every personality in the Japan travel community seems to tell you the same thing, right? Japan has changed. Is it really that big of a deal, though? We'd like to place some perspective on the broad transformation that Japan has had as a first-rate international travel destination, especially with the explosive growth in inbound tourism in the last decade. What is actually relevant and pertinent to know about Japan travel that's that much different from when we first got into it? And what aspects have remained stable? In this episode of Japan Travel Smart, we hope to highlight important differences that change the experience for everyone. These may be cause for added caution and concern that didn't always exist, but also to ultimately provide you with peace of mind, to actually understand and to make clear that the Japan experience remains awesome, and that Japan is the place to be for travel in 2026 and beyond. Now, it's not necessary to get too deep in the weeds when your idea is to come to Japan to visit independently. For most people, that means buying a plane ticket and cracking a guidebook. But you're here with me for a reason, aren't you? You have the time to sit in to find out more about what's currently going on and hopefully come out with a better travel experience for yourself. So let's take today's episode to really get to the cutting edge of today's environment for Japan travel. We are starting with the real elephant in the room, the stunning surge in international visitors to Japan. 2025 is already a record-breaking year for Japan tourism. The post-pandemic recovery could only be considered meteoric, while other markets have struggled to match pre-pandemic numbers. So this podcast is very much riding the wave of surging interest in travel to Japan. Official reports tell us that every month in Japan now exceeds well over 3 million visitor arrivals, with April and October being the highest months, just 100,000 shy of 4 million arrivals. We will note that these numbers do include traffic like business travel, international students, and transit passengers, but the majority is pure tourism traffic for sure. This means that the amount of visitors to Japan easily exceeds 40 million total for the year of 2025, a huge milestone shattering the 2024 record of 36.8 million. The takeaway here is that the increased rate of visits year over year still isn't slowing down after the post-pandemic rebound of previous years. 2024 numbers were 15% over 2023, 2025 numbers aren't finalized yet, but are projected to match the same rate of growth. It's like we continue experiencing a post-pandemic rebound in Japan year over year. That's explosive growth. Actually, in terms of growth in visitor numbers at different times of year, the shoulder months and low season months have seen the biggest rate of growth. This means that Japan is now a popular destination, even at times of year that are supposed to be quiet, like the winter months. What does this mean for smart travel in Japan? The top cities and hot spots are more crowded than ever. You will need to account for this, plan accordingly, or consider alternative locations. Incredibly, tourism bureaus in Japan are aiming for 60 million visitors by 2030. To put this into perspective, in 2025, we're actually getting only 2/3 of the amount of visitors that they want to see by 2030. Can you guess how many of these visitors to Japan are actually from Western countries rather than neighboring Asian countries? It's no more than 20% of the total visitors that come from places like North America and Europe. Asia dominates travel to Japan, with neighboring locations like South Korea and Taiwan making big numbers. The previously mentioned high traffic months of April and October make a lot of sense if we consider that they generally match the seasonality of cherry blossom and autumn leaves, which are a heavily promoted aspect of Japan in warmer Asian climates. But Western countries aren't falling behind in terms of growth of travel to Japan. There's a sustained growth everywhere, but the biggest increases are coming from Canada and continental Europe. Most of our listeners are from Western countries, and this is the segment that is seeing the most growth currently. Here's an interesting trend. Visitors from the West are now making multiple repeat visits to Japan and staying in Japan for longer. The average stay is now 8 to 12 days, and Western visitors are now more interested in making multi-region visits with increased interest in rural areas to avoid urban crowding. Stay connected with the show and with me for the latest on sustainable travel trends in Japan. Next up, the changes that matter and the changes that don't. The growth in tourism has brought about major economic benefits, with tourism accounting for an ever-growing share of the national GDP. This growth has also prompted important changes that are affecting the experience, including new policies at immigration, new charges levied in hopes to improve tourism infrastructure, and specific measures to address over-tourism. We would say that the common theme around these changes is addressing the need for an update of Japan's tourism capabilities and to place the country more in line with the requirements of a world-class travel destination. Japan will be introducing a major update to its short-term visitation policies, which will basically necessitate being pre-approved for access to the country in the form of an all-new electronic system for travel authorization that you will need to sort out in advance before the day you're supposed to fly out. That's right, it will no longer be enough to just pack a passport if you're visiting Japan from over 70 countries, including the United States. Americans may not be as familiar with it, but it's actually a very similar system to what's already in place for nearly all non-Americans to be able to visit the United States. You will need to apply online to state your intent to travel, and a new fee will be charged for every traveler seeking clearance to visit. Your visit to Japan will be subject to approval before you actually get to board any flight. That sounds like a really important change, doesn't it? Well, social media keeps bringing it up, but the actual implementation of the JESTA system keeps getting delayed. It's now not expected to take effect in Japan until 2028. Something similar happens with the Japan travel community and their zeal to hype up the Visit Japan web online form. Well, at least this is something that you can do today. The first thing to be sure about regarding Visit Japan web is that it's not a mandatory thing. This is because it's just a digital alternative to the physical immigration and customs forms that you often fill out upon entry to a foreign country. Of course, there's a chance that completing a Visit Japan web form in advance of your travel saves you some time at immigration, so as long as you find the time to do it in advance, feel free to complete Visit Japan web, available to do on any web browser. Just don't expect it to be super intuitive to complete, especially if you have a group traveling with you. It's also a bit unreliable and prone to glitches. You will be rewarded for your trouble upon successful completion with QR codes for you and each of your companions, which you can then use to breeze through some entry procedures. Or at least that's how it normally works. Sometimes the paper form lines are just as quick, if not quicker, than the QR code lines. It depends on the airport and the time of day. We don't see Visit Japan web as the game changer that social media makes it out to be. But at least for us, we also feel that way because we're kind of spoiled by the line skips from the Trusted Traveler program, which caters to those frequently in and out of Japan. Japan travel culture is still reeling from one of the most impactful changes in recent years: the price hikes in Rail Pass products, most notably the Japan Rail Pass, with an abrupt price increase of more than 70% on average on variants of this travel product. Pretty much overnight, the pass changed from a too good to be true deal into something barely usable for the most ambitious of itineraries. We now recommend looking into alternatives that include flying, regional rail passes, night buses, overnight ferries, or a combination of these. We have a dedicated episode on regional rail passes, so be sure to check that one out for more info. One of the most difficult to anticipate changes to the traveling environment in Japan involved the sudden and unexpected scarcity in prepaid transit cards, known as IC cards in Japan. This was caused by a temporary shortage in the components used in the contactless cards, and it had an impact since these cards were already a popular pickup among foreign tourists. Nobody wants to be figuring out fares and buying individual tickets. For a time, this scarcity forced new arrivals to rely on other solutions, including setting up digital wallets and mobile versions of the transit card, as well as special expiring cards for tourists available at select locations. While we are happy to report that the issue has since been completely resolved, this is a good time to bring up expanded payment options available for transit in recent years, including standard contactless readers for credit cards in trains and in buses, with support wrapping up in 2025. This is a welcome change, and better late than never, to reduce the reliance on IC cards and on one particular technology. There are some changes involving new or revised taxes and fees targeting overseas visitors. These fees are minimal on their own, but once you factor in all of them, they kind of add up. There already exists a departure tax, which you don't really need to think about since it's included in your airfare. However, we should note that they want to triple the levy by the next couple of years. This existing departure tax is meant to prop up Japan's tourism industry. Cities across Japan, including the ever-popular Tokyo and Kyoto, have hiked per-night accommodation taxes, with the more expensive rooms shouldering a higher tax burden. In 2024, Kyoto introduced a 100 yen congestion fee for buses in tourist-heavy areas. You might start to recognize a pattern of where in Japan visitors are being nickeled and dimed. Now, even when it comes to making use of the benefit that you have as a temporary visitor to get a sales tax exemption at select shopping locations, you will need to be aware of an imminent overhaul of the procedure aimed to curb abuse of the system. Unfortunately, this means you will soon have to pay the sales tax and then remember to request a refund at your point of departure. This new sales tax exemption system becomes effective November 2026, so keep that in mind and be sure to show your passport when shopping at supported stores. The idea of having a two-tier pricing system with foreign visitors in mind at important attractions or at restaurants is a very new concept in Japan, but they seem to be picking up on it rapidly. These are some of the notable attractions that have introduced differentiated pricing. Himeji Castle, the grandest castle in Japan, may charge up to 4 times the standard amount to overseas visitors. Museums in Tokyo have also implemented two-tier pricing. Some restaurants in the popular Shibuya district were reported to have tourist menus with markups on the items. The big theme park locations in Tokyo, Osaka, and even in Okinawa have introduced dynamic surge pricing with further segmentation for non-residents during peak visiting days. A popular ski resort such as Niseko will sell higher lift passes for internationals. You might initially be discouraged to hear about Japan introducing two-tier pricing, but we are here to assure you that these are still highly isolated implementations. It's not widespread by any stretch, and it aims to encourage crowd control and sustainability in a few of the congested spots that need it the most. At least in Japan, it doesn't seem to be a measure that is taken lightly. Most of these changes have taken effect rather recently from 2024. Before that, attractions in Japan were all uniformly priced and open. Some are addressing over-tourism with these new attempts to regulate the experience, a first for Japan. Another new reality in Japan to take note of involves visitor caps and new entry fees to major attractions, not just for overseas visitors. The most notable of these is Mount Fuji. There's a clear need to reach sustainability at a fragile natural site like Fujisan, so a daily visitor limit is now permanently in effect. You now register your climb in advance and pay a mandatory climbing fee for the privilege. These restrictions help manage trail congestion and waste. If you hope to see the world-famous Ginzan Onsen in Yamagata during the peak visiting season in the winter, you will now have to go through a strict reservation system with hourly slots to access the site in the evenings. Day-tripping visitors are capped at 100 per hour, and private vehicles may not be used to enter the location. These types of restrictions are going to require careful planning and research for independent travelers to access certain high-demand locations in Japan. The growing and sustained influx of tourism has had a predictable effect on accommodation availability, with high occupancy rates and hospitality infrastructure struggling to keep up due to rising construction costs, particularly in Tokyo. This has caused average rates in the city to go up significantly. People in Japan are reporting that it's become prohibitive to accommodate themselves in Tokyo. We've actually noticed more Japanese people on business visits to Tokyo staying in the international hostels, which used to be unusual. Our suggestion for securing stays in the Tokyo area that won't wreck your travel budget involves staying outside of the core of central Tokyo and commuting, with long-term weekly units being a smart option to book these days. Now it's more important than ever to book your stays in advance. Despite government efforts to diversify the Japan travel landscape for foreign visitors, the majority of them remain highly concentrated in the Tokyo-Osaka-Kyoto triangle, something which has remained consistent over time with spillover to other regions of Japan happening only in 30% of cases. Please consider taking your own trip to other destinations in Japan and reap the benefits from government initiatives to subsidize travel to underserved regions. Tourism to Japan is booming, thanks in large part to the current weakness of the yen. Everyone's holiday is cheaper, and tourist spending is up by a lot. But it's created pricing pressure, bringing about price hikes to compensate, including from the examples already mentioned. The weak yen is also stimulating domestic and overseas travel to less visited areas of Japan, with the countryside providing incredible value for those looking to experience it. While it's true that costs have risen for visitors, it's the exchange rate that keeps Japan highly competitive as a destination. The takeaway here is that it's such a bargain to be doing tourism in Japan right now, but that's something to take advantage of while you can. It's really difficult to say how much longer this will hold up. Even accounting for all these changes that impact travel and putting things into perspective, Japan remains the destination to rave about for the offered experience, with features like the cuisine, culture, and efficiency putting it ahead of all others. But do expect to plan more, to budget more, and to embrace alternative locations and spots to avoid overcrowding. Japan is making an honest effort to better cater to the needs of its international visitors. Here are some examples of the earnest change happening in recent times. Japan continues to invest heavily in infrastructure, technology, and services tailored to foreigners. Japan really isn't as reliant on cash as it used to be. We've seen a gradual move toward cashless payment systems, including QR code-based payments, which are widespread in urban centers. Standard credit cards are the safest bet in terms of global payment alternatives likely to be supported in Japan. Staff in Japan are better prepared to engage with foreign clientele and often trained to use translation tools to better communicate with non-Japanese speakers. This is something we didn't used to see much, but it's become more standard with the increased international influx. Consider us at the cutting edge of tourism developments in Japan, because we can report that popular Japan restaurant review platform, Tabelog, has just launched a multi-language version of their app, officially, for the first time, in late 2025. For those who don't know, Tabelog is the most comprehensive directory of restaurants with real user reviews for every one of them. This is not an advertisement, guys. This is something that people in Japan actually use. Tabelog reports 100 million monthly users, which is the clear majority of the country's population. Having more convenient, localized access to the Tabelog database and online reservation system is the key to allow more international visitors to discover neighborhood restaurants and local experiences that will help disperse the overcrowded hotspots. The foreign language version of the Tabelog app is available to download now, exclusively outside of Japan, so make sure to grab it before coming, or you'll have to settle for the Japanese language version. We recommend it 100%. Once again, that's Tabelog. Pause the podcast and download it right now. Speaking of eating in Japan, let's touch upon what changes have come about in terms of catering to different dietary needs. Awareness of vegetarianism and veganism has risen in Japan, with the most restaurants available in the major centers of Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto. Outside of the cities, Buddhist temple accommodation cuisine is naturally vegan in most cases. Japanese dish staples with a plant-based twist, such as ramen and sushi, are easier to procure now. As for halal food, government-backed certification has expanded halal-approved restaurants and products. We have halal ramen, sukiyaki, and some established chains catering to the visiting Muslim population. There's also more awareness of gluten sensitivity with rice-based alternatives, gluten-free pasta and bread, as well as labeling on food items. In general terms, the situation is better than some time ago, where these options were pretty limited outside of expat areas. It's always been challenging with ingredients like dashi fish stock and bonito being so prominent in Japanese cuisine, this being an obstacle for veganism. Planning with apps and advanced research remains essential for you guys, but there's more options and variety than ever. One of the most profound and permanent changes in how Japan is discovered and experienced in this decade is via inspiration from social media sites, and especially through short-form content. What used to be more of a word-of-mouth or guidebook-driven basis for tourism has accelerated into a discovery process based on virality and algorithms. Now visitors are seeking to recreate the exact scene that they saw on a social media post. Social media isn't just amplifying Japan's appeal, it's really changing visitor behavior, concentrating crowds in hyper-specific spots, and motivating responses by local communities and governments to bring about new rules and restrictions. The truth of the matter is that iconic spots are limited in space. We're talking about places like Fushimi Inari's Torigate tunnels, the bamboo grove of Arashiyama, and the alleyways in the Gion district of Kyoto, or the Chureito Pagoda photo spot for Mount Fuji. These areas have become overwhelmed in part because so many people are chasing the same social media shot. Traveler communities now frequently warn against TikTok spots due to overcrowding, overhyping, and the possibility of contributing to local inconvenience. Many now advise skipping viral hotspots entirely, and we're going to have to agree with them. We wouldn't be Japan Travel Smart if we weren't bringing attention to the compounding effects of mass tourism in recent times. So the smart Japan traveler today should try to carefully navigate an environment that's the result of the very content that inspired their trip. Not to overstate things, but if you're going anywhere that's a recognized hotspot, you definitely want to be planning around crowds, keeping up with new rules, and consider looking into alternative experiences to recapture authenticity. What conclusions can we draw from this transformation in the Japan travel landscape in the past decade? Well, things have certainly happened, and we're definitely better off with the knowledge of a more challenging visiting environment to prepare for. It's really nothing to roll over for, though. Don't let anything here make you think like you missed out on something that's forever changed. In some ways, we actually believe that the best of Japan is yet to come, with examples such as increased language support and culinary adaptations. This is a more thoughtful, more accessible Japan, while still safeguarding Japan's basic identity and unique cultural appeal. For those of you willing to plan a little more thoughtfully, venturing beyond the most viral spots, respecting local etiquette, and really embracing both the famous and the lesser known, we'll assure you that Japan will continue to deliver the most enriching travel experience anywhere. Let's all work toward keeping it that way. As always, thanks for listening. My name's Johnny, and I'm signing off with your reminder to, above all, be smart, and everything else will fall in place.